expressed on the internet would be censored.
We are live. We are live. This is real. Welcome back to Unauthorized Opinions, UOPod.com. Like, share, subscribe.
It's pure propaganda, and it's super cringe, by the way.
I literally went to the polls with nothing in mind. I saw a can of orange soda in the parking lot. And I was like, yeah, there we go. An unopened can of orange soda just chilling in the parking lot. I was like, yeah, I got to vote for Trump, dude.
Your podcast sucks. It's mental, mate. It's absolutely mental.
I'll be honest, I thought it was kind of offensive when you talk so much about the Loch Ness Monster.
Political climate.
And Andrew, treat yourself, okay? Especially if you start, I don't know, getting in good with homeless people.
Unauthorized Opinions, streaming everywhere at uopod.com. Cock-a-doodly-doodly-doo, man. Oh my god, it's like 90-something degrees. We're dying of heat. Anyone who's a fan of the videos or the show knows that I melt down once it hits like 90 degrees or 30 degrees Celsius. Probably much lower than that if we're going Celsius. 25? 90? I don't know the difference. Welcome back to Unauthorized Opinions, uopod.com. We've got so much to get to. The woke virus is permeating through everything still. In honor of Alex Jones, the fight is being taken to the streets. And in this case, the streets are Disney. In this case, the streets are the NBA. The Patriots are in control, you have to believe. Alex Jones, of course, is that going to get us demonetized right away? Maybe we should pass that 15-minute mark before we get into that. But the battle is still being fought in many places, but there's some places maybe you should not try to fight it. Maybe there's some places you should just ignore. That would be inside the walls of the Disney and Star Wars studios. Of course, Lucasfilm was first sold by George Lucas. I don't know how long ago anymore. Maybe 2010, something like that. And the South Park thing is true, where they said put a chick in it, make it lame and gay. That has come true again and again and again. And nothing has been more true to that fact yet than this new show, The Acolyte. Now, this is just Disney's second, big original show of the year. So they'll tell you it's the biggest opening they've had for Disney Plus show this year. But it's only the second show. And they release 2 episodes at a time, which, of course, will make it sound like they've had a lot more viewers than they do. But we had a sneak peek of it, I think, last week, where somebody said, this guy named Alan Ng, this reporter said, hey, just as a heads up, in the 3rd episode, they make changes to the Star Wars saga that will change it forever. And I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm not one of these guys who can tell you what happened like 600,000 millennia ago in the Star Wars universe. I can't fill in all the gaps for you between the movies. I can't even fill the gaps in for you during the movie because I'll probably fall asleep. I fall asleep during a lot of movies. We won't tell you why that is. Could be food, could be other things, but rest assured that I fall asleep during a lot of movies, especially opening weekends in the theaters. But for Star Wars, I'm as big as a fan as any other guy or any other gal if they're out there. But what they've done is completely ruin it. They've put not just a chick in it and made it lame and gay. They've put many a chick in it and made it many a lame and many a gay. And let's tell you why. This new show called The Acolyte, episode 3, they now tell you that the Force, and I won't go too nerd for you on this, but the Force is now different, right? This whole time for 50 years now as I check my watch, the Force has been, hey, it's this thing that everybody feels and everybody taps into, and some people can use it for magical purposes, right? Well, not anymore, you piece of shit. Actually, the Force can be controlled by a bunch of lesbian witches who can also make, lesbian babies. Not the babies are lesbian, that the lesbians have the babies, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. So in this new show, they've said everything's thrown out the window. Everything you've ever known is now, something more in the realm of we can do whatever we want. You can't say anything about it because we're lesbian witches, right? So Disney redefines the Force and introduces lesbian witches that can create life through unnatural means in The Acolyte. thatparkplace.com says. And if we go down to what the exchange is, and this website does a very good job. This is John Trent's website, a friend of the show. It does a very good job of breaking this down for you in layman's terms, because we are the layman's on this show. In the third episode of the series, the show flashes back to when two twins are children, and they're living on this planet called Brendock, which is, gotta make it kind of sound like Brenda, every aspect of it, right? Early in the episode, a character named Mother Anastasia informs the twins that the Coven, which is a bunch of witches, believes in something called the Thread. So basically, she says, all living things are connected by the same thread, a thread woven through all of existence. So basically what they're saying here is, the Force isn't the Force. It's actually just somebody's interpretation. Kind of like white privilege. This is what it is. It's like the lesbian black witches actually know the truth about everything. Yoda didn't know shit. Darth Vader didn't know. Luke Skywalker didn't know. It was actually a bunch of witches living in a cave before all that actually knew about it. So what happens is they slowly reveal that these two women who are the head of this this witch coven are actually, strongly implied to be lesbians, and they can create life without no man. We don't need a man in our presence. So it's after they redefine what the Force is, the show then reveals that what the witches practice is considered dark, as it begins some kind of ritual described as an ascension. And then after that, they talk about giving the gift of life, and they're talking about these two twins. And then the Jedis want to come test these kids because they're powerful in the Force, as they always do. They want to kidnap your children and test them. We won't say who else was like that. But the two witches come up with a conversation where they say, it's not your decision, it's mine, and I've made it. Then the other one says, I carried them. And the first one says, I created them. And what happens when the Jedi discover you created them? So they're all bothered that the Jedi are going to come and find out that they have the power to create people using their dark witchcraft. So if I was to say to you, how could I ruin Star Wars? And how can I ruin Star Wars in a way that's completely in line with the parody of South Park, where Kathleen Kennedy's gonna put a chick in it and make it lame and gay? What's the most ridiculous way you could go about that? One, you hire a lesbian woman to write it. That's right off the bat. You do that. They did that. Two, you make people more you make women more powerful than the Jedis of yesteryear. Let's say they've done that. Carrie-Anne Moss is doing kung fu in the show. I'm not kidding you. Another thing they would say is, let's make lesbians better than the Force. Let's say they don't need anyone. They're more powerful than the Force. In fact, they can control the Force, and they need to be lesbian black women. That's some other stuff you would put in. And then not just the Force. They can't just control the Force. It's got to be something else. It's got to be something anti-Christian as well. So we'll use the witches, which I'm told we're already in the story, but we need to use the witches. And we need to make it so that they're lesbians. And we need to make it so that they can create life. So what's the lesson here? If you're a hardcore activist who's dead set on ruining something, you're going to say lesbians who don't follow the regular religion that's predominantly followed, which in the show is the Force, are going to be able to create life without any men, and they're going to be able to do it whilst being more powerful than everybody in the universe. You couldn't write that more perfectly if you tried. If you took a 15-year-old trans girl, a girl who's trying to become a boy, and you said, make this the most batshit crazy, left-wing, pro-lesbian thing you can make it, this girl couldn't even come up with that. This 15-year-old girl who just got a mastectomy approved by the Democrats would read this script and she say, shit, I'm out of my league. You guys need to tell me. I'm going to listen to you guys. That's what this woman would do. She would bow at the altar of this, and she'd say, I want to work for you. As long as the minimum wage is $30 an hour, which is fair, I want to work for you, and you will teach me the ways, Carrie-Anne Moss, whatever the lady's name that directs it is, Amandla Stenberg, the star of it, because we've got all these crazy names, of course, in real life to play these people. But that's what happened with Star Wars, is they said, let's go ahead and make it run by lesbians, who now are the most powerful beings in the world because they can control the Force. They don't even just use the Force. They can control the Force. They're pulling these threads, and there ain't shit you can do about it. I'm swearing too much, you guys. And they can make babies without a man, which, of course, is every left-wing lesbian's ideology, all wrapped up into one Star Wars thing. So they said this did really well. It didn't. Disney Plus generally loses them a ton of money, and they can't seem to figure out why. But they'll keep pushing forward, They'll keep pushing forward. They'll keep doing... Kathleen Kennedy really has a vengeance here. She really... Every time you say something bad about Kathleen Kennedy, those words, they travel like in the movies when you can see all the data, when the data is revealed, the Wi-Fi flowing through the earth. Bad words about Kathleen Kennedy go up into the ether, and then she's got a giant suction at the top of the Magic Kingdom that sucks in all that energy, and then she straps herself into a chair. And she's just getting it all force-fed into her. Kind of like the Matrix, where they jack themselves in through the back of the head. But she's more strapped into a chair, where the energy is just flowing through her, and she can feel the power. And then her hand just has a pencil in it or a pen, and it's just writing down autonomously from her. And she just comes up with a movie like the last Star Wars movie, or she comes up with Indiana Jones, or she comes up with The Acolyte. And she blacks out. She has to wear a diaper. She doesn't even know what happened. And that's how Star Wars was made. True story. Where Disney is getting success now is ever since they decided sequels were the way to go, they made some money with Planet of the Apes, and they're like, everything's going to go well now if we keep doing sequels. So they did this Inside Out 2 movie, which is a super creepy movie, and I'll tell you why in a second. But they've been banking a lot on this, and it actually worked out for them, unbeknownst to the reasons unknown by myself. But let's take a look at why this Inside Out movie is actually pretty creepy. So the director of the film said his focus on puberty and anxiety is incredibly brave and bold. Now, that's not me saying that. That's Variety saying that after interviewing the guy directly, okay? So this guy, his name is Kelsey Mann. Pause for applause. This is his first big-time directorial movie, and even though it's animated, of course it's Disney Pixar, so it's huge, and he says in this interview, he asks the Disney, president, person in charge of whatever Disney is called, Pixar's chief creative officer, Pete Docter. This guy goes to the chief creative officer and he says, I have an idea for the remake or the sequel of Inside Out 2. And he says that he wants to make this movie much weirder and creepier. And they agree. And so, if you're not familiar with Inside Out, which I had to read about a lot because haven't seen it, sorry. They had in the first movie a bunch of emotions. So the emotions are inside people's bodies, and it's fun and it's animated. And then so in the first movie they had who? I wrote this down in my article. In the first movie they had Joy, hopefully Joy Reid. They had sadness, which would be Joy Behar. Fear, which would be Whoopi Goldberg, I guess. Anger, which would be Sonny Hostin, and disgust, which would also be Sonny Hostin. So they had all these emotions, and they had a young girl named Riley, and it's all fun and games because it was 2015. Now, what they wanted to do with the new Inside Out is this guy Kelsey Mann, he's like, this is my directorial debut, this is my big shot. How can I better signal to the powers that be that I'm a creeper than adding stuff about puberty and anxiety? So anxiety, of course, is hot with the kids these days. The kids are going to, they're going to feel they're represented in the movie if you pretend with them. And you'll notice if you watch any modern YouTubers, whatever after Gen Z is, the YouTubers really monetize the anxiety thing. They talk about their depression. They talk about their anxiety. They say how hard it is for them to continue making videos where all they do is walk around and commit vandalism or get kicked out of theme parks or something like that, they have this built-in excuse with their audience now where they just say, I was having anxiety problems, I was having mental health problems, I was feeling depressed, and the audience eats it up and they say, make me wait more for your content and I will give you more money to do less. So he said, I need to do anxiety, envy, ennui, which we all have to look up, of course, to make sure we're getting the definition right. It's dissatisfaction resulting from lack of self-interest, and embarrassment. So he wants to add anxiety and embarrassment, and then he says that Riley's also going to be a teenager. So we're going to focus on, as like a 50-year-old man, this teenage girl having anxiety and going through puberty. Now I ask you, parents, people, regulars of America and Canada and the UK and all the other places we're watched, if you were just like, I'm going to make a kids movie, it's my first big movie, what should I do? I've got Inside Out 2, I got to add emotions, I got to add something new to the story. Would your choice be, I'm going to make it about a teenage girl getting her period and the confusion that comes with that? Is that the thing? You're just like, as a guy, you're like, I can really relate to that. That's something I think is important story to be told. I think when children go to the movies with their daughters and their sons, they need to learn about puberty together. Is that a thing that you think is normal? And that's the thing you have to question when you read about these things. When you watch these movies, when you see these shows, is this was somebody's idea. This isn't just a movie that came into existence from the ether. This was a guy who's in his latter half of his life, let's say, maybe the latter third, and he thinks it's important for him to make a movie about preteens going through puberty. He said that could be difficult. Did you develop any new ways to help different departments work together? Blah, blah, blah. The film is all about emotions and adolescence. How did working on this film make you reflect on your own middle school years? It's helped me. I don't know what that means. It's helped him reflect. I really wish I had a movie like this when I was growing up, because I know you're going through a lot at that age. And a lot of the time you think it's only you that's going through it, that no one else is going through it. I knew that was a big opportunity with this movie. We can make this big film that goes out to the world to tell a lot of people that they're not alone. I wasn't sure if the studio would be able to make a film like this, but that changed when I pitched it to Pixar. Pete Docter, there he is, who's an incredible leader at the studio. He understood what I wanted to do from the very beginning. I think it's incredibly brave and bold what we're able to do, to put out into the world. It's incredibly brave and bold to put out a movie about a 12 or 13-year-old girl or whatever going through puberty. One of the other really stupid things, I think, in his answer was this claim where he says, when you're a preteen, when you're in middle school, maybe you're in 8th grade, you're in 9th grade, going into high school or something, you think that you're the only one going through it alone. I don't think that's true whatsoever. I think when you're going through puberty, you notice that other people have pimples. You notice that other guys are their voices are getting deeper. You're having voice cracks. Me and my friends, anyone who had a voice crack in grade 9 was getting made fun of immediately. But you know that the reason is because you're going through puberty, and you use every fiber of your body not to voice crack in public. You know that when you're going through puberty, maybe you answer your home phone and people think you're a woman. That's what happens to my friends. That's what happened to people when they're growing up. We're all scarred from it. But my point is, you know that you're going through puberty. Other people, you talk about it when you're with your friends, when you're in grade school. There's this whole mythical thing that they say, kids don't want to feel alone. Young girls. First of all, how the hell does this guy know what a young girl feels like when she's in grade 8 about puberty? I don't know how he thinks he can tell that story or why he would want to tell that story. But the idea that people think they're alone in this, in the world, that's a complete lie. And I would go to wager that this has been said for a very long time to justify making creepy movies about children that are 13 and 14 so that we can cast them in movies and get them to spread the messages that we want. I think that's the underlying message here. It's very creepy to say that I'm going to make this movie about this to help you. Isn't that what predators always say? And I'm not saying, he's not saying that this director is a predator in any way, shape, or form. This is not admissible in court, Your Honor. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is if that were to be the reason, that would be a very creepy reason. And I don't believe it for a second that any teenager thinks that they're the only person going through puberty. I think you can see it literally on other people's faces. Billy, I knew a guy named Billy, had a really deep voice, and he was small after he had puberty. There's people who had huge growth spurts. So I imagine similar things happen for girls where they talk about it and they know that they're not the only one. So it's a really weird thing to say. And I think that's like the Disney virus, where they're just like, hey, this is real. They're sprinkling it on you from a young age. This is a real thing how people think. It's just like the movies about losing your virginity before graduation in high school. It's like that's sort of been a movie thing that has been injected into real life so hardcore that it's just assumed that a teen movie is about, let's get 23, 25-year-olds to play 17-year-olds who are desperately trying to hook up for the first time. And there's nothing weird about us, portraying these people as teenagers and their weird and their exploits of trying to get laid, right? We can't make it in college, but it doesn't relate enough. It's a creepy thing that they're trying to inject into you, is my point. I mean, you take a movie like Old School, which was about college, and that was completely relatable to you in high school. Like, it was a huge hit with people in high school. Or Wedding Crashers, which is about adults. You try to go see those movies because they're about adults and you want to feel like an adult. They don't need to make movies about teenagers. They don't, because the teenagers want to feel cool and see things that adults are supposed to see. So they go and try to see them anyways. They download them, whatever. You don't need to. That's what my point is. There's somebody on the other side of the screen writing something. He's like, and this character's a 13-year-old who's trying to have sex, and this character's a 14-year-old who's going through puberty, and I don't want them to feel alone about it. Like, these are people who are writing these ideas down, and this is like their first thing that they want to do for some reason. And if it's not about their own life, that's really, really weird. Like, Breakfast Club was about the guy's own life. Superbad was about Seth Rogen's own life, even though Seth Rogen is weird. It wasn't just my first movie's idea is going to be about teenagers, etc., etc. It was about his own life. He was trying to get it made for like a decade. You know what I'm saying? So there's differences. Yes, there's nuance, bro. But think about that stuff. Think about why you would want to make that movie. If you could make a movie, if you had $100 million, would you make that movie? Probably not. But Inside Out 2 has done really well. They were hoping for about $80 to $90 million for the opening weekend. They said that. That was in many articles. They were trying to project that out there. It turns out, according to Box Office Mojo, that they made $155 million. A lot less internationally somehow. Maybe other people aren't as weird as them. But $155 million, they almost doubled. By some estimates, they did double their expectations. So I don't expect any changes coming out of Disney soon. They made like $50-60 million off of Planet of the Apes 98, whichever one it was. They made $155 million, and this is only through, Saturday, the first few days. The UK only liked it a little bit, 13 million. But in the US, 155 mil, however they got there, even if they made half of that, even if they fudged the numbers, that's still really successful. And that's going to tell Disney, steady the course. That's all they needed. So expect it. Mark it here on your calendars. Mark June 16th, 2024, as the day where Disney gave themselves the authority to do the worst crap for another at least 2 years and say, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't like it? Inside Out 2 did $155 million. Don't you want to see the Moana live action with The Rock and some other girl? It's going to be weird somehow. It's going to have a transgender person in it because people always talk about the islands having transgender people. That's my prediction here. But the main arc here is that Disney is going to continue doing what they're doing because Bob Iger, the CEO, said, that the sequels are going to work. And the sequel has worked. And it's not going to stop. if you're a WNBA fan, and I know you are, stay tuned. If you're watching on a Sunday instead of watching like baseball or football and some other sport, there's a problem. And yes, Caitlin Clark's really good, but most people only care about the stuff around her. They only care about the controversy. Very few people are actually watching any games that aren't Caitlin Clark's. She has doubled viewership for her games, yes, but it's nowhere near anything else still. But let's give her credit. The rest of the league hates her, as you know. And today there is a clip where her arch nemesis, trust me, it's not going to be a WNBA heavy clip.
Yeah, that's right.
Is being reviewed for a possible upgrade to a flagrant.
So they gave this Angel Reese girl, her arch enemy, a flagrant foul for basically forearming her in the face. Was she ever close to the ball? Doesn't look like it. She just, she swiped near the ball. It's still a careless foul, which is probably why they gave her the flagrant. So they're going to beat her up, and, that's sports. You're the next big thing. They're going to beat you up. But what I wanted to focus on was actually the media, because the media around Caitlin Clark is worse. It's worse than the girls complaining about flights. It's worse than the girls saying, she's got white privilege, because the media has the chance to shape the narrative. Things are going to happen that they have to cover, but when, in the clip that I'm about to show you, when somebody goes up to Caitlin Clark during a shoot around or a practice and they have a chance to ask her anything, and they ask her about weaponized racism and misogyny, that's a person directing things where they want to go.
Caitlin, I know you mentioned that, you want to focus straight on basketball. Definitely respect that. But when, just asking you directly, when people use your name for racism,
pretty white privilege,
misogyny, whatever, what is your response to that specifically?
Yeah, I think it's disappointing. I think, everybody in our world, deserves the same amount of respect. The women on our league deserve the same amount of respect. So people should not be using my name to push those agendas. It's disappointing. It's not acceptable. But yeah, I mean, this league is a league I grew up admiring and wanting to be a part of.
So that's basically her answer there. She gives a great answer of being somewhere in the realm of people shouldn't be using my name like that. They shouldn't be giving misogynistic or racist remarks. But the problem is the guy who asked this, right? They had two guys from this outlet called The Athletic go out, and they had them ask Caitlin Clark these questions about racism and misogyny and people using her name for the culture wars, which is obviously being done, but they frame it in this way as like, you must disavow Caitlin. So the first guy asked her these questions, and she gives this nice answer, and then another WNBA player comes out and says, how could you not think that everything's racist and sexist? And then an hour later, she comes out and she gives that answer. And I want to show you guys the first answer, because you can see how much they're pressuring this girl to, say the line. I didn't do it. Bart Simpson, say the line. There was a concerned effort on this day to put pressure on Caitlin Clark to, respond in the way that they wanted her to respond. So here's the first video, right here. And this is what they asked her the first time.
It seems no matter what you do or what is done to you, it becomes a topic nationally. And a lot of times it becomes divisive. I wonder from your standpoint how you feel about people using your name in whatever culture wars or whatever wars they're fighting. How do you feel about that?
It's not something I can control, so, I don't put too much thought and time into thinking about things like that. And to be honest, I don't see a lot of it. Like I've said, basketball's my job. Everything on the outside, I can't control that, so I'm not going to spend time thinking about that. People can talk about what they want to talk about, create conversations about, whatever it is, but I think for myself, I'm just here to play basketball.
So there's another minute of that. He tries to get her to talk more about that. She just says, it's not important to me. That was June 13th, 12:37 p.m. Then what we have is at 4:51 p.m., 12:37 p.m., a little more than 4 hours later, this girl named Dejanay, I promise you she's not the heir to a mustard throne, but she says, dog. How can one not be bothered by their name being used to justify racism, bigotry, misogyny, xenophobia, homophobia, the intersectionality of them all is nuts. We see all this, we all have a platform, we all have a voice, and they all hold weight. Silence is a luxury. So she's saying Caitlin Clark is evil for not saying that, everyone's racist and bigoted, and that it must be nice to be able to be silent because you're white, obviously. So that's 451. The first video we saw was 544 that same day. So it took about less than an hour. Now, who knows when he filmed this, but less than an hour after that, and he says in his tweet, as that girl alluded to, then she gives the answer where she says it's disappointing. Everyone deserves the same amount of respect. They are trying to push this girl to the brink of insanity. They want her so badly to be, a girl who is great at this sport and represents this sport, but also represents hardcore left-wing talking points. They cannot handle a person simply not giving their opinion in sports because they want it badly to be what they agree with. If they could give Caitlin Clark $100 million to never play another season, but spend this entire season talking about how everything's racist, just so they could get the 3 months of headlines about her saying how she is white privilege and she's only this popular because she's white, they would do that just for 3 months of headlines because it would further their agenda that much. They cannot handle Caitlin Clark being apolitical or presenting to be apolitical, because it breaks everything. It breaks their whole matrix, right? This girl goes into a sports league. She's white. She's really good. She's getting attention because she's really good. They cannot handle something that they've controlled, which is the WNBA. With Brittany Griner, hyper left-wing lesbian, hates the flag, hates the national anthem, changed her mind after she was arrested in Russia. What a surprise. All these other girls are giving the Las Vegas team $100,000 each for no reason. All these other girls complaining about white privilege and racism. They controlled that for so long. This girl comes in and all of a sudden people care about the league. They cannot have it. It has to be the way they need it to be, or else what do they got? They can't control other sports leagues, and they can't control the UFC. So they thought they could control this one, and now it's slipping away from them. I mean, they kind of can control some of the other leagues, I should say. I mean, they got them to do that, but I think moving forward it'll be harder and harder to get people to do what they want. I mean, the NHL got rid of Pride Nights. It's dwindling in so many other things. Never existed in the UFC. They thought they could control the WNBA, but through all of that, the WNBA is still going to lose $50 million, guys. They're still going to lose a massive amount of money, and that's with all these new viewers, all these new ticket holders, all these new sponsorship, all these new eyes on their league. They're still going to lose $50 million. And they gave them planes. They can't take away the planes now, even though the cost, I think it's about $12 million a year. They typically use about $10 million annually. Let's just read a little bit of this. A report citing WNBA sources, that was the Washington Post, cited some sources inside the league that revealed despite their wall-to-wall coverage, the league will still lose $50 million this season, with the Basketball Association reportedly taking in between 180 to 200 million the previous season. It is still just a fraction of the $10 billion plus earned by the NBA. Given that Commissioner Adam Silver said in 2018 that the WNBA loses about $10 million per year, that would amount to at least $200 million and upwards of $260 million in losses since the league's inception in 1997. So they've been around for almost 25 years, and at best, they've only lost $200 million in total, according to the estimate by the commissioner. The report by the Washington Post detailed that the WNBA is expected to lose $50 million from the current season, citing two unnamed sources who are aware of the financial figures. The sources told the outlet that they did not have permission to publicly discuss the league's financial status, probably because the WNBA doesn't want to tell everybody that they're going to lose $50 million. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert said publicly that the NBA provides a huge advantage for the women's league in terms of marketing, especially with streaming services who rely on a 12-month subscription model. So what she's saying here is that if we weren't on the same package as the NBA on streaming services, we'd lose even more money. So the NBA is on these streaming services, and they carry us along with them, and because of that, people will actually watch us for some reason. Another anonymous WNBA team executive admitted to the Washington Post that the WNBA likely would cease to exist without the financial backing of the NBA, an idea that has been in the theory of the sports fans, of the NBA's fans for some time. The truth is, this league would be hard-pressed to exist without the NBA. Of course, because they subsidize it. Even with all the apparent success, it doesn't seem likely the league can be pushed into the black simply by the existence of star Caitlin Clark, who's been a marketing sensation for the WNBA. Recent attendance reports noted that as of June 11th, Clark sparked an 87% increase in attendance in away games compared to her opponent's average home attendance. Her presence also accounts for 33.5% of the WNBA's total attendance this year, according to Sportscasting. Average attendance for Clark's games are double the league average, and whereas this is interesting. On average, they get 7,600 fans to a game, which is not very much at all if you're in the sports world. You need about 17 or 18,000 typically, which is the size of a hockey arena or an NBA arena. Somewhere between 17 to 20, typically. I mean, 'cause they're basically selling out that arena size is what you need. An NFL stadium, I think the minimum you can have is 67,000 seats. But that number increases by 105% for Clark to 15,142 at her game. So without Caitlin Clark, they're selling 7,600 tickets. With her, they're selling 15,000 tickets. And her games get just over 1 million viewers, 1.099 million viewers, and games without her get only 414,000. So that's almost triple the amount. She gets almost triple the amount of people watching the games. Almost double the amount, or more than double the amount, of people watching the games in person. And then we get down to here where they talked about the charter planes. That cost them about $25 million per year. So even if they got rid of that, even if they stopped giving them the charter planes, they'd still lose $25 million this year, which is more than double what they usually lose. Now, you might say you got to spend money to make money, but after 25 years of spending money to make no money, you would think that they might be a little tighter. But who knows what they're thinking. They're not going to give up these planes. Once they started, they probably knew that they couldn't go back. But Caitlin Clark is being pummeled into the ground by the media. And this guy, James Boyd is one. And the other one is, Jim Trotter, who's a very, very social justice activist. These guys, when you ask these questions like this, it's because they don't really have any friends. I don't know any guy who would be respected by other guys for going up and asking a girl, what about racial, and misogyny and racial prejudice? And do you feel that people are using your name to weaponize sports topics? Do you feel that people are using your name to weaponize misogyny? I get that you want to play basketball and everything and that you're good at basketball, but are people weaponizing your name? And how do you feel about that? These are guys that don't have friends. And I know every person watching at home, every guy knows that you wouldn't get along with a guy who talks like this, and that his friends would make fun of him if he spoke like this. Any actual man, right? Any man you'd care to be around. And girls, that the only reason a guy would do this is because he's trying to impress a girl, and that wouldn't be the type of guy that you would want to be with. There's no girl who wants to be with a guy who talks like this. This is how guys get girls. James Boyd and what was his name? Sorry, I already forgot. Jim Trotter. They ask these questions so that women will like them. They ask these questions so that people think that they're fighting for black women. They ask these questions so they think that they're fighting for women's rights and that they're on the side of, the non-racist, the anti-racist, the anti-misogynist. This is how they get women. This is how they try to. They still don't. We all know this. They still don't. But this is their way. This is how they've tried to weasel their way in to the marketplace of relationships. They're all out of ideas. They say, what if I become a guy who defends women against misogyny and racism? That's how I'm going to get it. Because even if you are truthfully doing those things, a woman gets beat up and you rescue her or something like that. If you are legitimately fighting against misogyny or racism against women, that still doesn't become your job, right? There aren't any guys who are standing next to Riley Adams at every press conference and podium because it's not their role. Like, this is not something that a guy does 9 to 5, 6 days a week. Women stand up for each other in that regard, as they should, and men help them along the way and come in. This happened. We've seen this over the last 2 or 3 years. Men have stepped up and said, "This, you know what, girls, you need to keep these guys. You need to refuse to play with these guys." And we're gonna say so. We're gonna say that these guys are taking advantage of you, and they're actually dudes, and they shouldn't be around children. They shouldn't be in these girls' locker rooms, and you got to do your part and refuse. You don't see guys who making this their whole ethos. You don't see guys going out and being like, "But the racism and the misogyny, don't you care?" They just say this shouldn't happen, and it's up to you to agree or disagree, and ultimately it's your sport. Police it as you will. Not, "But Riley, Riley Gaines, won't you talk about the racism and the misogyny? The people are using your name." That's not how a man acts, and you'll be hard-pressed to find anyone who acts like that and has a bunch of male friends. Patreon.com/UOPod is where you can get the bonus podcast that we just put up the other day, just for $7 a month. These are measly Canadian dollars, you guys. Measly Canadian dollars that, if you're not in Canada, you can afford. I shouldn't say that. You might not be able to afford it, but if you can, we would appreciate you helping us out. Patreon.com/UOPod. You can help us become Joe Rogan and get looks like this on our face every single day. A shock of the success. You can be like the Raptors super fan and contribute $15 a month. You can see the tiers here. If you go to the highest tier, you can request topics or, different videos to be discussed on the podcast. We've done it before. The latest podcast was Stay Away from Ventura with Uncle Hack. He's a comedian from the ultra banned, ultra censored Danger Cats. Patreon.com/UOPod. You'll get other podcasts. We're going out to do Streeters, I think, next weekend. We're going to an event. And we're going to have new advanced footage for you. So that's a benefit of Patreon, is it will be there first. The extended version will be there only. And you will get to see that at patreon.com/UOPod. On the wonderful website that is Blaze Media, you will be able to sign up there if you want additional content, if you prefer. If that's more your style, you could sign up to theblaze.com and you will get our paywall content, which I'm trying to bring up for you right now. There it is. The latest is with Ty Rivera. It's an interview. We interview comedians and we talk to them about current trending topics. Ty Rivera, gay comedian, who was talking about Pride Month and why it's pretty much all a sham and why these companies don't care about gay people and why they're trying to sell you things, why they're currently dialing it back. So that's Ty Rivera. You will be able to see this unlocked. We're only going to show you that much. But the interview is in there, and you will get all the rest of the Blaze documentaries and all the other wonderful things. You sign up to the Blaze or Blaze TV. Theblaze.com. You guys, thank you very much. And we're back. And we're back. We're pushing through here the second half of the show with a game you might be familiar with, a video game called Dragon Age: The Veilguard Romance. Now, there's 3 other games in this genre or of this franchise, And they're a little bit weird. You know, there's one of the games that's medieval fantasy. And there's dragons, and there's elf people, and there's orcs and everything. And there's always been romantic arcs. You can, like, fall in love with other characters, etc., and vice versa. But now, since the last game was made in 2014, it's 2024 now. We've got to amp that up somehow. We've got to make it clear what our agenda is. And over at BioWare, which is the game company that makes this, they said like a few months ago that transgenderism has always been part of their games. Impossible, of course, since they came out in the 90s and this was not a thing. But now it has to be that. Confirmation that all the companions in the game will be pansexual. And this wasn't just a happenstance either. They didn't just say, well, I guess technically they're pansexual because they can go cross species and they can fall in love with anybody in the game. That's almost quite normal in games where, you know, you might fall in love with an orc, might fall in love with you, a guy might fall in love with you, because you might play as a girl, you might play as a guy, you might play as whatever. But so this wasn't just happenstance. They did this on purpose. They made it so that you can have sex with any other thing in the game, and they said, of course, we are an M-rated game, so we have nudity. Why wouldn't you have dragon sex in the game? And the crazy thing about this is the director, like I said, it wasn't just happenstance, but the director of the game said specifically that this is what they're going for. Did I mention that the director of the game is transsexual? It's not until later parts of the games where you really commit to romance and it gets pretty spicy. This is a pervert sex game for perverts, we'll call it. And the director's last name is Bush. It's Corinne Bush, this transgender person. Rather, Bush insists that they're all specifically pansexual, and that might come through in what you learn about their backstories, their past experiences, or partners. They'll reference them and indeed who they'll become romantic with. For instance, we saw Harding. I might be playing a straight male character flirting with her, but if I choose not to pursue a romance, she might get together with Tash. So my perception, my identity has no bearing on their identities, and they come through really strongly. So imagine you're from IGN, and you're so woke that you're choking on your wokeness. And then somebody from BioWare comes out, and they out-woke you and shock you that says, no, they don't just happen to be, you know, different characters of different races and species having sex with each other in our game. They are specifically pansexual. You're going to have sex with a dragon. It's not going to care if you're an orc or a woman or a man. It's going to have sex with you. You're going to do it and you're going to like it, and it's become spicy. We have nudity in this game. It has nothing to do with me being transgender. Okay, this is the director. This was pointed out by That Park Place. Again, good work going on there. This person had this as their Twitter profile. Corinne Bush, trans woman, she, her, game director, queerosexual gendermancer, trans rights, BLM. Obviously, that's what you're going to have if you're this person. Articles come out about, you know, this person being strange, and you've got this now completely wiped, just as game director of Dragon Age takes everything off. Because we can't have people knowing what I'm actually like. As soon as you show these people who they are, as soon as you point out what they're doing, it's like all people are doing is pointing out that you said everybody in this game is going to be pansexual and there's going to be nudity in it, and it's awesome. All that was done was that was pointed out. And it's like, oh my God, you're killing me. You're putting me in danger. I have to private all my stuff. You can't talk to me. I have to be insulated. That's how we know these people are insane. But luckily the internet exists. They can't take everything down. Here's this guy's, you know, a very pretty man. He's the hottest guy. I'm sure he looks himself in the mirror every day and says, I'm hot. Being a game director is about being a steward for the vision that we as a team have defined. It's a role I have a high-level view of everything as it's coming together and can steer the project as it does. But ultimately, it's about empowering people who work together. I mean, that's the normal stuff. But that's not what we're talking about, is it? I think the sound just went out there for a second. I expected I'd probably work in film, she says, but while looking at career prospects, I was fortunate enough to land a contract gig doing environment work on Tiger Woods. Maybe that's what set him over the edge, was working on Tiger Woods. Talking about Dragon Age. In Dragon Age, you can be who you want to be, explore the possibilities and consequences of your choices, and build relationships that leave a lasting impression. Few games give that kind of autonomy while also weaving such a rich narrative. I really think it speaks to why our players feel so invested in this world. And the idea of being who you want to be carries a particular special meaning for Corinne. As a queer trans woman, she says, I have a perspective on the games that not everyone has. Dragon Age has long been a place where gay folks can see people like themselves represented respectfully. I just don't know why you need this. I just don't know why you need to make everything about you. Normal people don't pick up a game and say this NBA game doesn't have enough white guys in it. Grand Theft Auto doesn't have enough white people in it. It doesn't have enough straight people in it. It's been a black guy, it's been a white guy, it's been an Italian guy, it's been a Serbian guy. Nobody really cares as long as the game is good. They're going to make it a guy and a girl and probably a transgender in the new one. This is the wild stuff that goes through these people's minds, and they think that it's normal. They think that it's normal to come out and be like, well, the people in this game have to look and act like me. They have to be a queer trans woman in this game and a dragon at the same time. Isn't that how everybody else feels? Doesn't everybody else think that everybody in the game needs to be exactly like them? And then you've got 5 other people that are just like, yes. This guy transitioned while he was at this studio, so they probably couldn't fire him. Even though if somebody was like that outwardly, dealing with problems, you should probably not be working. I mean, can you just imagine that? Imagine somebody's just like, I feel weird, I'm going to take 2 weeks off. They come back in blackface. Aren't you going to be like, oh, what's going on here? It's weird. It's weird that you would just come back to work and expect everything to be the same, even though you completely changed who you are and expect nobody to have a problem with that. And then you change who you are, and then you forcibly inject that into a video game and say that this is so nice. But if somebody was to do what you're doing with white people and be like, I'm putting white straight people in this game, and the white and straight people need to have this stuff in games, you just be like, how dare you? Even though that's what you used to be. If you do the same, if you do the same thing that they do, and put it in front of their face, they're outraged. And if you just show them, you just recite what they're doing, what they say their beliefs are, they say you're killing them. It's a strange thing to do. It's a strange way to live life, and you can't trust these big gaming companies anymore. BioWare, Ubisoft, they all want to push this weird agenda, and I don't know how they allow these people to take control of some of their biggest games and say, this game is specifically about this niche agenda, and this is why you have to buy it, and if you don't, you're bad. Let me chastise my customers into buying my game, and when they don't, like in Suicide Squad games, and when they don't, we'll blame you. We didn't do that. We didn't hire a company to say inject this black lesbian girl plant lady who's playing Poison Ivy as a teenager into this. We didn't do that. If you have a problem with it, you're killing us. It's weird to me that they allow this stuff to go on to their company. Here's what I was talking about a few months ago. BioWare talked about how today's Transgender Visibility Day. Trans people have always been part of our world. We're proud to support them both within our games and real life. Duh, that's clear now. But to say that in 1995 you always had trans people in your worlds is an obvious lie. And this is how this guy reveals to you that he wants to support transgender people either because he wants to sleep with them or he thinks that it's a virtuous thing to appeal to people like this. That's like saying I want anorexic people to be anorexic, and if you don't like them being anorexic, you're a bigot. It's why would a guy say that? Probably because he's attracted. He's got a fetish for anorexia. It doesn't stop. The weird things don't stop. Like, they stay within the lines. You don't get one thing and then you get something similar, and it's all of a sudden it's completely different. You know what I'm saying? You don't just like lettuce on its own and then you say it's disgusting in a sandwich. Those people are, if you did, you'd be crazy. My brother likes like pizza sauce. He likes tomato sauce. He hates tomatoes. That's crazy. So if you're saying support somebody's mental illness about thinking that they're a different gender, but you're saying don't support their mental illness if they're bulimic or if they're anorexic or if they have multiple personalities, even though that's supported on TikTok now, that person's crazy. The logic doesn't make sense. You gotta be consistent with this stuff. And as soon as you present that to these people at BioWare, then you're just killing us. The last thing I want to talk to you about is a bunch of soccer fans. Since it is the Euros right now, happening as we speak, hopefully for Lewis Brackpool's sake, friend of the show, England won. We don't know yet, though. But I wanted to talk to you about how a soccer player was racially harassed, and this one is real. I know we hear all the time about people being people being racist against them, or comments being seen as racist or sexist or anything like that. But this one is real. This is about a guy named Vinicius Jr. He's a Brazilian guy, and they chanted things at him like monkey. And yes, I'm going to show it to you because you need to see it so you don't just think that Andrew's gone soft. We're going to show you. So here's what they did to this guy on multiple occasions. I think we'll be able to hear it here. So that's a stadium full of people calling this guy a monkey, and it didn't stop there. Here's what more people did.
Vinicius Jr. breaks down in tears after he was racially abused again.
So he was playing soccer in, I think, Morocco, is it? He goes to play with a bunch of children in the street, and this is only a short while after, he had entire stadiums calling him a monkey, which is insane. And Spain's a super progressive place, which is where it happened. Spain has rules on the subway against manspreading, but apparently there's a little bit of disconnect. So people chanting mean words at him for a long time. Then he goes to Morocco. He's like, I'm going to be a good guy and go play soccer with some kids in the street. And they do this.
ومونكي والكحل ومونكي والقرد وبلاك فيسكا بارسا اروخو وين
So they're calling him a slave, they're calling him a monkey, and that wasn't all that was done. They also hung a effigy of him from a bridge. What did that say on it? Pardon my not knowing there. It says Madrid odia al Real, which translates to Madrid hates Real. Obviously the two teams, but this, mannequin they have hanging from the bridge has his jersey on it. So that's not good optics, is it? So they're yelling monkey at him in the stadium. They're calling him a slave in Morocco. They're hanging things from a bridge at him, about him. But the people who were yelling, there was 8 people, I believe, that were caught yelling monkey at him in one of the games. Last year, I believe, or earlier in this season in late 2023. And what ended up happening is they found these people and they decided to charge them, and they actually went with 8 months in prison. Following the game, Real Madrid filed a hate crime complaint against 3 fans who remain unnamed and were arrested. The fans were found guilty of a crime against moral integrity and the aggravating circumstance of discrimination based on racist motives. The 8-month sentence, is 3 people sentenced to 8 months. The 8-month sentence was accompanied by a 2-year ban from soccer stadiums, and it was originally a 12-month sentence and a 3-year ban, but they had to accept criminal responsibility, at which point their sentence was reduced. So literal hate speech crimes over in Spain, and it's really weird that Spain has hate speech crimes, and they're super progressive in almost every way, but at the same time, they've got like a good 50,000 people who are willing to call a guy a monkey over a sport. So a lot of conflicting stuff going on over there. The question is do you agree with the person going to jail? So let's think about this, or the 3 people. I think being mean in a stadium, I don't think that should be a crime. Did you throw anything? No. Did you run onto the field? All you did was say mean words. And obviously I can't agree with what they're doing. It's actually insane. Like, this is why I tell people that there is actual racism in soccer. I mean, people have had bananas thrown at them. It's crazy. A lot of these South American countries and some Eastern European countries are insane with the racism. Go watch a YouTube documentary if it's still up there. It's by somebody else, but it used to be on YouTube. It was from the Euros from 2008. Euros 2024 right now. It's called Stadiums of Hate, when it was in the Ukraine and Poland. And what they show in that is that people would go to soccer games in lower levels in Ukraine and Poland, and they would have gigantic banners of calling people hook noses and other racist things. They'd have gigantic banners. They'd be chanting monkeys. All of these things is what they would do. Back in 2008, I think it was like BBC Panorama. It's hard to find. It's about 12 years old, but the documentary is called Stadiums of Hate, and you will see that all across the world there's insane racism in soccer, actually, not just the type they complain about in North America where it's just like, oh, somebody doesn't agree with me, but actual racism. So if a person is being mean in a crowd, I don't think that's worthy of arrest or charging or anything. Now, people are going to argue the throwing the thing over the bridge and all that stuff, the imagery of it. Obviously, it's horrible. Is that a crime? I mean, it might be a crime of vandalism, of a death threat of a person, but in general, I don't agree with hate crimes. I think those are crimes that are also just mean. I think if you've planned to commit a crime against somebody and you've planned to do something to them that's already against the law, I think there's it's literally within what I'm saying. It's against the law and it's illegal to do these things. You can't harass a person. You can't, even if you're going to up to a person and start screaming racist things in their face, you're probably committing some sort of crime of harassment or criminal nuisance of some kind. So just to add the hate crime on, I think is just an extra way to convict people of more and get a bigger sentence out of it and deter people from doing it. But in and of itself, I think the people are probably committing vandalism and doing other things that are already against the law. And I think hate crimes come down to freedom of speech. And you're just trying to teach a person through the force of the government, which is by a gun. You're choosing to enforce something using a gun, trying to force somebody to do things and speak the way that you want them to. You don't want them to be mean. You don't want them to be racist. Well, the government can't enforce non-racism. That's what they're trying to do with this stuff. They can't enforce, not being mean. Or else, what else is being homophobic mean? I think that's under hate crime laws. Is calling a person fat a hate crime? I mean, what's the difference really? If you hate a person because they're fat or because they're ugly or because they smell, is that a hate crime too? If it's an unjust reason for hating somebody, if you hate somebody because they're hairy or because they have a big nose, that's not fair. Should that be against the law too? That's where I think the slippery slope really comes in, and it's a way for the government to make things off topics for you to talk about because they don't want you to say it. Is it mean to make fun of a person for being vaccinated or unvaccinated? Yeah. Should it be a crime? I don't think so. It's just that the racism triggers people so much. It's such a sensitive issue that nobody wants to say that it shouldn't be against the law to be racist towards somebody. But if you put it in other words, like, should you be given a stricter jail sentence if you call somebody fat, if you were calling them ugly, if you were making fun of their medical status? Like, it's weird how they select these things. What's meaner than the other? I don't know. That's something I'd be up for further discussion. But, the way they treated this Vinicius guy is terrible. Do I think they should have went to jail? No, not for words or being racist or anything. I think they should go to jail if they're committing crimes of criminal harassment or vandalism or public nuisance like that. And that's how I feel about that. You can't legislate tolerance, somebody says. We're going to leave it at that. Thanks a lot, David McNeil. Thanks for watching. If you're listening on the podcast on Spotify or Apple or Google, please give us a rating. Please give us a review. Please share it with your friends. I thought the first part of this podcast was hilarious, if I do say so myself. And we're talking about the things that people don't usually want to talk about, but they need to be talked about. We've passed the Rubicon. If you're watching on Rumble, please subscribe. YouTube, please subscribe as well. Leave a comment. And go to patreon.com/UOPod. We're going to be there more often. And like I said, we've got Streeters coming next week. We're going to go do some next weekend, so look out for that. Have a blessed day. Cheer on your favorite Euro team without being a mean guy. And let's hope those Edmonton Oilers lose the Stanley Cup tomorrow night. You guys, see you later.
Turn it up, Jordan.